I genuinely did not feel like filming this video because, first of all, I've been feeling a type of way, but also because this video is obviously going to be a wrap up of all of the books that I read in September and October, as well as the essays I read. I've been feeling, I don't know, I guess disillusioned, and also, I don't want to use the word lazy, but I just haven't been feeling motivated enough to talk about the books that I read. But I promised myself that I'm going to document my reading journey this year on this channel as much as possible. And I also already verbalized the fact that I upload a video once in 2 Sundays, so every 2 weeks. So I decided that this video is going to be just me mentioning the books that I read in September and October, and mentioning just one or two things that I found intriguing about those books, as well as the blob of the books. So I'm not going to do any brain-racking activity by myself. I'll just read the blob of the books from Storygraph and mention one or two things. Aisha, 2 things maximum. I think as I film this video, my mood might improve, and obviously if you're seeing this video, it means that I managed to overcome whatever it is I'm feeling and edited this video and also uploaded it. So before we get into this video, let us do something that would uplift my mood just a little bit. This looks and feels wrong. I have on this mask that I have had for a couple years now actually, and it's supposed to expire this month. So I said, whoa, let me just use it before it expires. I got it as a free gift from Stella. So I'm just going to do this for the next 15 minutes or so while I talk about some of the books that I read in August and September. So the first book that I finished in August is actually a physical copy. So it is called Edo Souls by Stella Gaitano, translated from the Arabic by Sawad Hussein. So I got this book at the beginning of the year. I shared this in my library updates video, and I have been waiting for this book for a couple years. So they first announced it. I first saw the announcement for this book on Twitter back in 2020. So it's published by Daedalus Books. Yeah, Daedalus Books. And I've read some of their books on Script at the time when I was using Script. So one of the books that was published by them is Cowives and Cowidows by, I think, Adrienne Yabouza. So when they announced this book on Twitter, I said, okay, I'm going to read it. And I was intrigued because this book is the first book written by a South Sudanese author in Arabic to be published into English. If you're not familiar with the history of Sudan and South Sudan, so Sudan and South Sudan used to be one country. There was a lot of separation along ethnic skin color lines. So people from present-day South Sudan are obviously darker skin. People from present-day Sudan, they have varying skin complexion, but definitely lighter than people from South Sudan. Pre the separation, there were South Sudanese that lived in Khartoum, in different parts of what is present-day Sudan. And a bunch of Sudanese people were also stationed in maybe like government positions in what is present-day South Sudan. So there are 2 countries that are intricately linked, even though now they are 2 separate countries. So this author, Stella Gaitano, used to live in Khartoum before the country separated, and then she had to move back to, I think, Juba. Yeah, Juba is the capital of South Sudan. And then now she lives in Germany, actually. She lives in Germany now. Edo Souls follows a young lady called Lucy Egino, and she's coming of age in a village in Southern Sudan. So it was not South Sudan then, it was just Southern Sudan in the 1970s. And there were rumors of approaching violence because, violence from rebel groups and just violence in general. So she flees first to Juba with her husband, and then flees to Khartoum. So we also encounter another character called Mako. He's a gentle young father, and he wages a daily battle to keep his family together while avoiding frictions with any northerners, because now Mako is living in Sudan, but is also from Southern Sudan. Is living in Northern Sudan at this time. And then we also have another character called Peter, who is a soldier that is unsure of where his loyalty lies and is forced to carry out night raids searching for bands of rebels. So Peter is a soldier in the northern part of Sudan. And obviously this is where the majority government official power lies at the time before the country is separated into two. So, and Peter is of South Sudanese origin. So, hence the dilemma. So yeah, basically we follow these three characters, but there are also other sub-characters in the book. One of the things I found very interesting about this book is the way that the chapters were structured. So the chapters don't have titles and they are narrated in first person. So each chapter is narrated by different characters and you don't really get to know which character is narrating what story until a couple lines into the chapter. And I found it interesting because I wasn't confused at all. So I would, at the beginning I was thinking, oh, is this going to be just Lucy telling us a story? But then along the way, I would see that different characters would tell stories. And the different characters telling stories were not just Bako, Peter and Lucy. A bunch of other characters in the book also told their perspectives, which I found interesting. The only thing I didn't like about this book was that I felt like the ending was rushed. I felt like the author was enjoying telling us a character-driven story for so long, and she just wanted to end the book, and she just ended the book. It was quite disappointing. Like, I was disappointed by it, especially because of the hype that I felt for the book. So I gave this book 3.75 stars because I had expectations for it. I generally enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed the storytelling. I enjoyed being in Sudan before it splitted into two. I enjoyed the angst of the characters. I enjoyed the squabbles as well. Also enjoyed the discussion with the concept of motherhood and feminism. But generally, the book disappointed me. I wouldn't even lie. So I just give it 3.75 stars. I would definitely be reading more books by Stella Gaitano in future. That much is true. This, in terms of the political, social relevance of the book, this is very, very interesting book. And I absolutely recommend it, especially considering what is going on in Sudan now and the fact that a lot of the victims of the war are also experiencing something along the line of ethnic and I guess skin color. They're experiencing some more violence along the lines of ethnicity and skin color. The next book that I finished in August is this one called Building a Second Brain, a proven method to organize your digital life and unlock your creative potential by Tiago Forte. So I already mentioned that I was reading this book when I did my July wrap-up. So I mentioned this book briefly. And I was very excited to talk about this book because this is one of those books that changes your life. I generally do not enjoy reading all this aspire to perspire book. I won't even lie. But this book was recommended in one other book that I'd read in July called The Energy Fix. Because the author recommended this book, I decided to try it. And also because I knew for a fact that my brain was one of my energy leaks, and I was right. For the first time in history, we have instantaneous access to the world's knowledge. There has never been a better time to learn, to contribute, and to improve ourselves. Yet, rather than feeling empowered, we are often left feeling overwhelmed by the constant influx of information. The very knowledge that was supposed to set us free has instead led to the paralyzing stress of believing we will never know or remember enough. Now, this eye-opening and accessible guide shows you how you can easily create your own personal system for knowledge management, otherwise known as a second brain. As a trusted and organized digital repository of your most valued ideas, notes, and creative work synced across all devices and platforms, a second brain gives you the confidence to tackle your most important projects and ambitious goals. Once I started reading this book, I pretty much realized that I have been incorporating the idea of building a second brain since I started using my notes app. It was while I was using some of the tips from this book to organize my notes app, because that is my preferred platform to build my personal second brain. I say personal because I created another second brain for everything work related. So everything software engineering, everything related to the work that I do, debugging, things like that. I created a separate second brain for that because I just find that this system works for me. Once you read this book, you would naturally find yourself gravitating towards a system that inherently works for you. So my notes app is synced across my notes, my iPhone and my iPad, and it just makes the transition seamless. Like I said, it was after I started using the tips from this book that I realized that I have actually been implementing some of this. So, for example, there are notes from my captions from when I was still very active on Bookstagram. So what I would typically do then was, if I had an idea for a post, I would write the caption in my notes app and just keep it on my phone. So when it's time to create the post, I just take the picture, copy the caption, and then just post it. Most of my captions on Bookstagram today, I have them on my notes app. I have Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. I have a bunch of summarized notes here, which I have found very helpful because I can pull them up anywhere. The stages of building a second brain is remembering, connecting, and creating. And it came up with this idea to build your second brain, which is called code. C stands for capture, O organize, D distill, and E express. This is the summary of this book. I mean, there are more important things in the book, like more explanations that you will find interesting, but this basically summarizes the book. The idea is that you capture only what moves you. Then organize is for actions, which gives tremendous clarity. So after you've captured the things that move you, you then organize, because then that helps you create clarity. So you organize based on systems, you organize based on topics that you want, you organize based on folders that you've created, you organize. Then distilling is for finding the essence and or to find patterns. So distilling is when you have all these things that you've captured and organized, things that have moved you that you've captured and organized, you're able to then find patterns. And then the last one is express. The fact that you've grouped all of this information, you've captured the information that moved you, you've organized them into this different sorting system, and then you are able to find patterns. It helps you express your own ideas and your own work. After a month and some weeks since I finished this book, I can confidently say that gaining the knowledge to be able to create my own second brain and find my own style with capturing has significantly reduced my energy leak where my brain is concerned. It's not perfect yet. I don't have the perfect system. If for nothing else, this is enough reason for me to recommend this book to anybody that is experiencing low energy. You need to fix your energy leak, because I am pretty sure that your brain is contributing to your energy leak, and ergo you need to create a second brain or two second brains. The next book that I finished in August is Silken Gazelles by Jolha Alharthi, translated from the Arabic by Marilyn Booth. This is the third book by Jolha Alharthi to be translated into English, and I've read all our books translated into English. Actually, my review of two of our books from 2022 recently started getting a bunch of views on this channel. I'm going to link it here in case you want to check out my thoughts on them. Silken Gazelles follows two Omani women whose unbreakable connection is forged as nursing sisters, a bond considered akin to that of sibling. So they are raised as sisters, and Gazala is devastated when her friend Asia, who is a milk sibling, is forced to leave their small mountainside village. It is a separation that haunts her into adulthood, and she never gives up on finding a love that might replace that bond that they shared. Years later, Gazala's family moves to Muscat, which is the capital of Oman, where she falls in love with a professional violinist who lives in their building. She surrenders herself completely to his charm, and despite her parents' opposition, runs away from home to marry him. While balancing the duties of a new wife, caring for her husband, their home, and before long, their twin boys, Gazala resumes her education and enrolls in a university. This is where Gazala meets another student called Harir during their freshman year. And in the pages of Harir's diary, Harir recounts the story of a deepening transformative friendship with Gazala over the course of 10 years. The elusive, ghostly existence of Hasia exerts a force over both of their lives, so Harir and Gazala. Yet neither Gazala nor Harir is aware of this connection. This is one of the things I found very intriguing about this book. So we followed three women on the surface. First of all, Jolha, Alharthi, all of the books that I've read that have been translated into English by this woman follows female characters. Our characters are usually Omani women, and they don't have a particular destination. They just meander around these women's lives, and she would usually touch on very interesting experiences of being an Omani woman. This book is the best book by Jolha Alharthi that I've read. It had a lot more flow. There was a lot more coherence to the character-driven stories. The characters were more fleshed out, even though this book is still like short. It follows as typical short style storytelling. She explored the characters a lot more for me. I really enjoyed experiencing Gazala and Harir, especially. I wish I got more of Asia, but through Asia, she examines the concept of firstborn daughter in like the Gulf world, which I found very interesting. Some of the things that moved me in this book, for example, I took a screenshot for my second brain. Gazala was telling Harir at some point that if a person isn't in love, then what are they going to think about all the time? And I highlighted this thing because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what she was thinking, because from the blog that I read earlier, I mentioned that she was trying to fill the void that was left when Asia moved out of their village with romantic love. And this is something that she tried to do throughout the book. And it got me thinking that I know that we talk about how women find a lot of fulfillment in female friendships and just relationships that they have outside of romantic relationships. And it was just sad to see this character, Gazala, trying to fill the void of the love that she got from a friendship, essentially a sisterhood, with romantic relationship, even though we know that this is not the case. You can replace the void created by not having romantic relationship with the love that you get from sisterhood. But from this character, what I've just learned is that reverse is not the case. You absolutely cannot replace the love that you get from sisterhood as a woman, from community. You absolutely cannot replace it with romantic love. Another thing that moved me, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, that moved me about this book is there was a part that Harir was talking about the idea of having domestic help in the Middle East, obviously in Oman, but it got me thinking about the concept of employing domestic help in the Middle East in general. This character, Harir, she's aware of the power dynamic. She's aware of the injustice. You can tell from the way that she's talking about seeing an Arab woman in just randomly wearing silk abaya and sunglasses and clutching their handbag, wearing international designers, and their maid is just there wearing pinafore and uniform. The first time I visited a Gulf country, I was very surprised by the idea that you needed to put your house help, your domestic help, in a uniform. Is that concept of it's elevating your appearance? So she was examining it and talking about it, but she found herself defending it using the exact terms that these women would use to defend it. And it just got me thinking that even when we are aware of the practicality of injustice, the fact that we benefit from it, we're privileged by the concept of that injustice, sometimes will stop our rational brain from doing the right thing. And yeah, this was just something that moved me while I was reading this book. The next book that I read in August is The Marigold Mind Laundry by Jungeun, translated by Shana Tan. This is a comforting tale of a magical laundry that blooms into existence one night, and how its enigmatic owner must learn to find her own peace before she can help others. So, the mind laundry, it's a laundry where you can wash off the stains from your art. And it follows, basically this book follows a young Jiwoon. Jiwoon is the owner of the laundry. She accidentally misuses her power, causing her entire family to vanish. So she vows to keep living over 1,000,000 lives in search of them, because she has a bunch of magical powers. Then overnight, in the village of Marigold, she brings the Marigold Mind Laundry into existence. The service that this laundry provides is to remove the darkest stains from your art. So, Jiwoon listens while unhappy memories transforms as a stain on a particular t-shirt, and then after a spin in a washing machine, the stains transform into red petals that then are scattered in the air, basically. Through this, we then meet 5 wounded characters: a frustrated young filmmaker, a spiraling social media influencer, a mother who has discovered her husband's other family, a young woman two-timed by a lover, a talented photographer, and victim of bullying. In my second brain, I wrote that I thought this book had an interesting premise, and even though it seems a bit extreme that people can just come in to wash away their emotions that they don't like. I love how pretty much all the customers, even the laundry owner, Jiyoon, came to learn the valuable lesson that true happiness is not the absence of pain or struggle. True happiness comes from living one's life to the fullest, in spite of and because of the myriads of good and negative emotions we have to live with, and that it's what you do with it. Basically, it's what you do with it, the lens through which you look at things. I love how the author ended Jiyoon's story, because I felt like it is a part of our growth arc. I believe it also adds color to the story. So this is a spoiler, so I don't want to mention it. But yeah, my conclusion is that this is a good healing story, and I wonder if the idea of thinking about your sadness and pain and seeing them manifest as stains, which can then be washed away, can be mirrored in the idea of sitting down and really feeling your own emotions, no matter how complicated they are, and then writing or speaking or drawing them out. So this was just an attempt at distilling, I guess. I was trying to connect ideas here, where I said that the idea of, you talking about your pain and then seeing the pain manifest as a stain on a shirt, I wonder if that is the direct analogy of you sitting down, feeling your feelings, and then sitting down in complicated emotion that you're feeling at that moment, and then finding a way to let them out. So, the way the pain manifests as a stain on a shirt, you writing them down can be a way to manifest the pain. You drawing them out can be a way to manifest the pain, and you speaking about them can be a way to manifest the pain. This was just an attempt at distilling. I was trying to connect stuff. Ergo, what I learned from the second brain. This was a decent book. I gave this book 4 stars. And I read this short, children book called The Magic Gem, a Korean folktale about why cats and dogs do not get along, written by Kim So-eun with Jeon Kyun Sim, I think is how to pronounce it. So this was basically a children's book about why the history of how cats and dogs don't get along. Like, what happened that cat and dog don't get along. It was just a book. To be honest, I just read it randomly while I was at the park. I didn't give it any stars. I just read it because I just wanted to read something. The last book that I read in August is called Antram by Banu Mushtaq, translated from the Kannada language by Deepa Bashti. Sorry for butchering your name. I don't think I pronounced it correctly. But yeah, so this is a collection of 12 short stories, and it won the International Book Prize for this year. So I was intrigued by this book because of the title, and also because it's the first book to be translated from Kannada into English. And I thought it was interesting because apparently Kannada is pretty well spoken in the southern part of India. So, it's quite interesting that we've not translated any book from that language into English. But then again, there are not many books translated from Yoruba into English. Anyway, so I generally enjoy the stories in this book. I said generally because there were a bunch of stories that I didn't really enjoy as much. The stories as much as I enjoyed the writing. So all of the stories are written in very sarcastic, like humorous way. Clearly the stories examine very serious issues that women are going through in the society. Serious issues that are underlined or underpinned by culture and religion, because the stories are set in the Muslim communities in southern India. So you can see how people use Islam, religion, but specifically Islam in this case, to properly oppress women. Bro, I felt a lot of anger. I felt a lot of anger reading this book, but the humor that the author writes the stories with, softened that blow for me for the most part. So the titular story is especially very painful. I felt the pain of the firstborn daughter in that story. Like, I felt that pain that she felt, and I felt like I was shouting at the main female character in the story to please don't make the decision that you want to make. Please don't make it. Please don't make it. And all of this, even after having laughed a bunch of times earlier on in the story, I enjoyed this short story collection. Like many short story collections, not all of the stories are the best. For example, Red Lungi is one of the stories in this book. It doesn't look like it had a definite theme that it was trying to explore, but I think that was the beauty of the story, in that it was underpinning the labor of women in relation to something that is male specific, like circumcision of boys. And I gave it 4 stars. Actually, I would definitely be reading more books by Banu Mushtaq if they ever translate any more things into English. So I've come to the part of this video that I'm sure that most of you are very interested in, and that is the essays that I read in August. So the first essay I read in August is Starvation is the Colonizer's Whip by Marwa Ezam, on disguising a deliberate starvation as an innocent famine, drawing a parallel between the Great Hunger in Ireland and the current starvation in Gaza, Palestine. So this essay actually taught me about the Great Hunger in Ireland and how that ties to the concept of Irish potato. The next essay that I read in August is The Depressing Pursuit of Happiness by Zara, one of my favorite Substack authors. This essay, for me, tied back to my reflection on the Marigold mind laundry that I mentioned earlier. It was a nice connection that I was able to make in August. Another essay that I read is Why Women Are Weary of Emotional Labor of Mankeeping. I am not sure who wrote this essay. Another essay that I read is Not the Perfect Victim. Here is How We Enable Abuse by Wada Abbas. We need to step down from our moral I-us and stop enabling abuse. Another essay that I read is I Didn't Bloom, I Just Didn't Fall Apart by Yasmin. This was a nice introspective essay about carrying on even when it feels like you are too lazy because you keep stopping. Another interesting essay that I read in August is this one called We Touch Bros But We No Gay, The Hidden Intimacies of Ghana's Fraud Boys by Awo Dufi Furfi. So basically, apparently there's a concept where men are padlocked inside for months to work on online scams. So we call it 419 in Nigeria, but basically Yahoo online. And because they are padlocked inside and they've done some rituals to help them in their business, young men are forbidden to touch women as part of these cleansing rituals. Then in the silence of that isolation, they reach for each other, and even sometimes trans women as a loophole to the rule. And for me, this essay is the epitome of how human beings rationalize things. The human brain is very interesting. If don't let me spoil this essay for you. Read this essay. Another essay that I read is Adult Hobbies Worth Trying by Ayushi Takar. I really loved this essay. Sewed Vaginas, a practice called female genital mutilation by Shariba Pasha. So I read this essay because of a part of the book that I read in August called Edoso. So I was reading one chapter in this book, and it questioned my understanding of what female genital mutilation was. So I went online to search for articles to get people's perspective. Female genital mutilation is a practice of cutting, removing, and sewing of parts or all of the female genitalia for non-medical reasons. It is performed to the girls after their birth till puberty, and mostly is cut at the age of 5 and 6. The procedure is usually done by a traditional circumciser using a blade and other alike stuff, which is unsterile and is highly unhygienic. The logic behind such traditional practices is to prevent the sexual insertion into the female flower before getting married, which according to the practicing communities is apparently a sign of our upbringing, purity, modesty, and our family honor. And usually the stitches are opened by the husband after marriage, oftentimes very violently. Let's just carry on. Another essay that I read is How Heavy is a Art? A Tale of the Weight of a Chronic Illness by Zainab. So this author is a friend of mine, and I enjoyed reading this. I guess yes, you could call it a poetic prose, because Zainab mostly writes poems, but in a way that tells stories, which I generally don't mind because I'm not a fan of poetry like that. Another essay, well, I wouldn't call this an essay to be honest, but another article that I read, I guess, is Why You Should Stop Rubbing Your Eyes. It was just a random article that I found when I read something about how rubbing your eyes can cause weird medical conditions. Another essay that I read in August is The Forgotten Virtue of Magnanimity, How Being Bigger Than That Can Help Us Cope with Anger by Donald J. Robertson. This was an article that I found randomly on Substack, and it was a brilliant article. I would not even lie. When I feel anger, I state it as information and briefly explain the reasons. Leaving space for resolution, if none appears, I choose its expressions, but never suppression. At the same time, anger dissolves as awareness expands. When you realize somebody cannot go beyond what they show, it is like noticing that they have blue eyes. You can't be angry at the fact. Another article that I read in August is this one called Girl, Wake Up, Your Unfiltered Self is More Than Enough. On Body Dysmorphia and Breaking Free from Beauty Standards by Warda Abbas. Another essay that I read in August is The Billionaire's Contradiction, Femi Otedola's Guide to the Life He Didn't Lead by Feyi Fawaimi. For Croc, the product was the religion. For Tedola, the product was simply the medium of exchange. This lack of deep product engagement is not a personal failing, but a pervasive feature of the Nigerian business landscape. Because the true source of fortune is rarely innovation or product excellence. It is information asymmetry. It is him knowing somebody you don't know. The product is almost irrelevant. It is the conduit through which access and privilege are monetized. This summarized Nigeria in a paragraph for me. You need to know somebody. Another article that I read in August is The Art of Losing Friends, grappling with the truth that some relationships have an expiry date and finding peace in knowing that's okay, by Ekran from Ink After Midnight. If life were a train journey, some people would only ride with us for a few short stops. We shouldn't spend the rest of our trip hoping they will come back on board. Instead, we should cherish the moment we shared with them, no matter how brief, and then look ahead to what's next. One of the best things I ever did for myself was accept that not all relationships are meant to last the entire journey. And the Yoruba people will say that Ogun ọmọdé ò ń ṣeré fún ogún ọdún. It's not possible. I don't know if I got it right, but yeah, Ogun ọmọdé ò lè ṣeré fún ogún ọdún, which basically means that 20 children cannot play for 20 years. It's not possible that 20 children would play consecutively for 20 years. There are so many factors that would change that. So another article that I read in August is Self-Silence is Making Women Sick by Mailtal Iyal. This is pretty self-explanatory. Women don't talk about a lot of things and they end up having a bunch of autoimmune diseases. Another article that I read is Love Life is jokes about me aren't funny, but it won't stop. This love life couple talks about moving from campus sweethearts to navigating long distance and wild jokes and female friendship almost tore them apart. This is written by Adeyinka Odutuyo. Wait, did I pronounce this person's name badly? Odutuyo. Maybe this is how to pronounce it. But anyway, this person wrote this article. Another essay that I read in August is Everyone Should Be Wearing Fake Marghelia Tabbies, Eradicating the Pretentiousness of the Split Toe by Female Menace. Another article that I read in August is Pinterest is Killing Your Creativity, by the way, also by this author, Female Menace. I think I read one article by this person and then I read a bunch more articles. I watched a TED Talk about how craving attention makes you less creative. Hosted by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he went on to talk about how your art suffers when you aren't giving your work your full attention. If you are paying attention to what everyone else is doing, then your work pays the ultimate price. This, I felt like, spoke to me, especially where YouTube is concerned, because previously when I first started this channel, I had a bunch of creative outlets, Bookstagram. I would write articles, then I would talk about books on Twitter, but mostly Bookstagram. And then this was an additional creative outlet for me. But since I made the decision to stop posting on Bookstagram, and I also haven't written articles or book reviews for magazines in a while, and I don't use Twitter anymore, this has been my only creative outlet for books. And so because of that, I have been zeroing in all of my attention on this platform, and then by extension also comparing my channel to a bunch of other channels that I've seen in terms of numbers. And I'm pretty good at pulling myself out of that voice, but it can get very demoralizing at times, to be honest. Even though I know that I am focusing on my art because this is my only creative outlet now, and it is imperative for my survival to have a creative outlet, sometimes it can get overwhelming when I am focusing on other people's channels, essentially because of numbers in comparison to my channel. So this particular quote spoke to me that the instances when I'm focusing on other people's channels, specifically their numbers in relation to mine, my art is going to suffer. So I just have to pick one. Another article that I read in August is Stop Disrespecting Your Emotions. When you denigrate, diminish, ignore, bury, or block your emotions, it makes every single challenge in your life more difficult, by Ether Avrileski. Nevertheless, my reluctance to not just accept the full range of my emotions, but to respect and receive guidance from those emotions, led me into a lot of frustrating, confusing, upsetting, shame-inducing situations. It also limited my career options and made my life small. I connected with this paragraph because for me, it shows that even when you are not actively trying, the way that you handle your emotions would impact pretty much every single corner of your life, including your career. And people don't immediately think about emotional growth in relation to career growth. And for me, that was a connecting moment. That is everything for all of the essays that I read in August.